Welcome everyone.
Yeah, good.
And of course, welcome Mounir from ParaSwap. Nice to finally meet you in person, I guess, as far as real life is possible these days. How are you doing?
Yeah. Doing fine. Great to see you. We've been talking in Telegram and virtually meeting, and finally seeing each other face to face.
Yeah. I guess. Were you at ETHCC? I think you were at ETHCC, right?
Yes, I was. Yes.
Yeah, that was like the last time, we were like properly after the conference, I guess. It was like patient zero for our industry. So it's kind of weird and exciting to be there.
Yeah, I think it's the last real event this year so far, because right after lockdown started, but at least here in Paris. So I think it's the last crypto event that was in person for this year.
Yeah, were you presenting anything there, or did you? Who were you there to speak to?
Yeah, I had two talks. One with Brice and Arthur from DeFi France. We had a special DeFi France where we talked about DeFi in French for the French community. It was very cool. We got a lot of interest. A lot of people show up. And I had a separate talk, which was in English for HCC. That was so cool. I talked about ParaSwap, about liquidity, about the dexes and perspectives and all that stuff. It was cool. But also, it's easy to spend. I think I watched two talks, and all the rest of the time was just talking to people and hanging out with people. It was really cool. It was really cool. 3 days, 3 days in a row, and nights and days.
Yeah, I very much miss being social. I guess for anyone listening, if you've never been to like a crypto conference, you definitely should. It's very, like, back in the old days, at least for me, I always felt like before like crypto was like a big subject in the world, or before, the technology really meant anything to people, it was always like very motivating to be in a place where there's like other people in real life who are as passionate about something as you are. So I kind of missed that. I guess, when did you I looked at a bit of your history on LinkedIn, only very briefly, and I guess I found it interesting to see you switch to Ethereum. When did you switch to working on blockchain on Ethereum? Why?
Full time, it's with ParaSwap. Before I was working as a freelance in different topics. Full time, I think, in ParaSwap, and started slowly. Started at late 2018. The idea came in when I was in Web Summits in Lisbon, late in October or November 2018. And then I was talking to many people and many entrepreneurs who happened to be there as well. They were working on different crypto projects. And we were in the middle of the bear markets right after the crash of early 2018. And people were still working on this very 2017, 2020 projects, like this futuristic wallet that can do a lot of stuff that nobody needs, or this supply chain for big corporates. And I was thinking that maybe these people are missing the point of crypto, which is creating an alternative finance and making it fair and accessible to everyone in the world. So I started digging more into what's happening in crypto and the financial side. At the time, DeFi term was just starting to roll up. I think even the group was just created the Telegram group, and got a lot of interest in decentralized exchanges. In the beginning, wanted to launch a decentralized exchange that is faster and better and so on. But it turns out many smart people are already working in some very cool projects. And the problem wasn't the speed of the settlement, wasn't really the UX per se, but was the liquidity. All of those other problems are very, very important, but the liquidity is the main problem we have right now. We're still having it, and that's where the idea of an Expedia platform could make a lot of sense, because it will artificially solve this liquidity problem by just bringing it into a single place for the end user, for dApps, for wallets, for other consumers, so that people can have access to more liquidity, as more or less they were interacting with a centralized exchange. Still far away from centralized exchanges, but at least they can get access to good prices. And also, they won't need to compare themselves as the Expedia experience or the Booking.com experience they can have. So there started the idea of ParaSwap emerging. And in the beginning, I had a naive approach, where I can see it backward right now, is to build something purely for retail, for end users, something like a Coinbase, a decentralized Coinbase, which turns out to be very early on the market last year. I mean, the market matured a lot since. And it was a small dApp with some charts. It looked a little bit like Coinbase, like Binance, like it's very small UI, small and simple UI. But yes, it was a bit early, so we switched to a pure DeFi product for DeFi users, for heavy DeFi users, which turns out to work pretty well.
Yeah, I guess you say a bunch of stuff that's interesting. So, like, indeed, as our space has kind of evolved, people have come up with like many ideas, many really great ideas, but there's always been kind of a distinction between ideas that are in a way before their time. It's like what you were saying with like enterprise blockchain connecting all this stuff up, or like supply chain or whatever. Like all of this does ultimately make sense if you look at it in total isolation, but the reality of our space is kind of that you do ultimately rely on other companies. Like in a way, our space kind of revolves around memes, right? It's like the big meme on Ethereum right now is this thing called DeFi, right? And this has grown to such a large extent. Like back in the early days of Ethereum, people were talking about having all kinds of assets. Like people were talking about all the different things that would eventually happen on Ethereum. It just wasn't clear what would happen first. And it's kind of become apparent that DeFi is the big thing that's going to happen first. And so it makes sense to like have like a company like ParaSwap that tries to leverage and benefit from like what's already happening in the space, and that's true for us as well. We're like, yeah, like it's clear that the first general public consumer experience that would be powered by blockchain, that would be powered by Ethereum naturally, is going to be one that brings all the power of DeFi to the masses, right? Because that's where the real value is. And that's, I guess in a way, maybe like ParaSwap and Monolith are effectively tackling very similar problems, just on like a different level within the synergetic ecosystem, right? Where, like I kind of feel like the complexity of the Ethereum space is growing by the day, and trying to wrap your head around what's happening and keep up and be able to use the right DEX or be able to get the right token is becoming more and more difficult, right? And so you kind of need services which basically do the work for you. And I think that's you're a big part of that, at least for us.
Yeah, definitely. That's what's happened in other fields, and it's a natural evolution of. The time, as you mentioned, when things become sufficiently overwhelming for end users, this kind of services makes more sense. But I guess for you, you're tackling also a very interesting problem, for bringing the masses into crypto. Let's say in general, DeFi right now is like in my opinion, the first concrete application to crypto. But in general, like bringing people who already have credit card, who use it every day to pay for expenses, for restaurant, for travel, for and so on, they can use DeFi right now. They don't need to wait for a layer 2 or layer 3 or whatever scaling solution we would have in 1 year, 2 or 3. They can use it right now and just I use my Monolith credit card almost every day, and it feels like I'm using a normal card. I mean, for the buyers whom I'm paying, I mean, they never ask me what is this card. It's just a nice card. That's some the compliments they make, but it's yes, it's a straightforward, very smooth experience for me personally, and yeah, I think it's a very pragmatic approach to bringing crypto to the masses in a non-custodial fashion. That's also a key point, I think, because their credit cards existed a few years ago where you can spend your crypto, but the fact that these cards are custodial, they also misses the point of crypto. It's just redundant, I think, that a exchange having custody of your crypto and making you spend it, and you're spending what's the IOU you have in the server. You have no control over your funds. Now you have control and you can interact with the legacy world. It's fantastic. Yeah, it's right.
I think indeed part of like the excitement from my perspective is it's like feeling that you will be going out there into the world, and that your card, or it's officially not a bank account, right? But something that effectively is able to replace your bank account is powered by something that is so fundamentally different than anything that anyone else is using, right? That is powered by this totally new financial system. I think that's such a potentially special feeling, that you're part of the new economy, right? That you've like withdrawn yourself from the old world, from this old, dirty, corrupt system that powers the world today, and that you've like definitively entered this new economic realm. And I think that's like the feeling we ultimately want to bring to like our users, right? And it's only just starting today. We're only starting to get to make people feel really special about this, because the product's still very basic, right? Still early days, but like when we think about where we can get to by using the power, the magic of DeFi, we can create like a consumer finance experience that that you kind of would imagine would happen in like like Cyberpunk 2077, like the new game set in like the far future. It's coming out later this year, I think. But it's like that's the type of financial experience you'd imagine in some sort of cyberpunk world. We can build that, right, with Ethereum, with DeFi, and turn it into this really engaging experience. It's almost like a game. It's like assets that a normal bank could never dream of, right? Yeah, and I think, yeah, it's just this. It's literally our brand. So I'm sure when you when you got our card, and you like on our we're on our social media, and it's coming into the app. I guess this is a big thing for people who have our products. Like the whole app is going to be infused with these alien characters that you see, but these aren't just arbitrary characters. These are the users. These are people who have who are once human, right, part of the old economic world, and who, when they started to use Monolith, when they started to use DeFi, when they started to join this new economy, they transcended. They became new beings. They became Ethereans, right? And so these characters are literally meant to represent us, like people living on Ethereum. And yeah, I think indeed when I first understood the DEX aggregator, it just really blew my mind. And I think it's just one of the many things that's exciting, that's just developing in the space. I guess Yeah.
And where do you see the next steps? Where do you see yourself heading in the next 3 to 5 years? How do you envision the evolution of the Monolith ecosystem that you may be creating?
Yeah, I think I've noticed. I started to really notice something recently happening on like crypto Twitter, where even people who are part of, let's say, the ETH 2.0 development crowd, right? These very intelligent, mostly mathematicians who are building the new version of the Ethereum protocol. Like I noticed that they've kind of been giving signals that they themselves are out of touch with what's happening in DeFi, with what's happening on Compound or like, all the yield farming, all this stuff. And fundamentally, I guess the observation is that if our space, our little Ethereum space, is already fragmenting into people not quite, very intelligent people, not being able to quite understand all the different parts that are happening on Ethereum, it's something that's going to be hard to keep up with, right? For anyone, right? Especially people outside of our space. And so I think the direction that we're taking Monolith in is to make the assumption that DeFi already today is becoming very complex. And already today is, if you want to keep up with it, it's literally a full-time role. And so if we can build an experience that kind of just takes all of the thinking out of it, makes it more of a passive, like financial money experience, rather than like this active experience where you have to try and understand all the different protocols. I definitely think for us, that's the right direction, where we can provide value to the broadest potential user base. And like ParaSwap is the perfect example of how we're going to get there, because it just removes the additional complexity of having to find, in this case, like a DEX. But I'm sure in the future, wherever you're going next, you'll the technology you've built is broadly applicable to almost anything ultimately that has complexity on Ethereum, right? Like as an aggregator. So yeah. I guess where are you going?
Yeah, definitely, yes. So Ethereum is just the start, if you would, of something bigger. And obviously, this is where the market is right now on tokenized assets. The tokenized assets are native, or most of them are native right now. The BATs and of the world. But the idea is to become a asset connector, which means tomorrow you want to swap a Bitcoin for a CDAI on Compound. You have Bitcoin, you want to sell it, and you don't want to stay just in a stable coin, but earn interest on your stable coin. But you can do it in one transaction, and we'll make sure you will get the best DAI price for it by doing some what we call a multi-path swap, or what arbitrage traders, they call it a multi-hop. So you will get from the Bitcoin to Ether, and then Ether to DAI, or maybe Bitcoin to DAI, and so on. The goal is to keep this approach of connecting unconnected assets, or like, I don't know the term in English, but assets that are not well connected. For instance, you are today, if you go to Uniswap and you want to sell your ETH for CDAI, chances are that you will either lose a lot of money or you won't even find a price for it. But if you use ParaSwap, it will find out what is the intermediary token to swap to. Like from ETH, maybe you will go to DAI, then go to CDAI, and imagine that applied to Bitcoin. But imagine that also applied to gold. Imagine that applied to Apple stocks, and so on. As long as they are on a blockchain, not necessarily Ethereum. So Ethereum is the blockchain that works today and has a critical mass in terms of toolings, developers, and also a project built on top of it. But you can imagine a future where we could be using maybe a Cosmos or Polkadot, or maybe something else that will show up in the middle. And the ParaSwap can be used to automate these kinds of operations, financial operations for end users. But how we envision ourselves is not necessarily serving end users directly, but serving apps like Monolith and other wallets and apps that's on the backend side, so that users don't even need to know that we exist, but we empower the and the product that they are using. That's our long-term vision, is to apply the same tech and grow it into other assets that are not necessarily existent today in the blockchain.
Yeah, I guess our engineering team had very, very good things to say about working with you and ParaSwap.
Had a good time, yeah. Good time.
Yeah, I guess we're all really excited to, like, the experience is so incredibly fast now. So like, I think you do like really good caching, as far as I understand. That like, you put the the moment you like choose the asset in the wallet and the amount, it literally takes like 1 second to pull the data, which is just so good. I think someone else said, and don't hold me by this, but I believe someone was saying that of all the wallets that have integrated like a DEX or a DEX aggregator, that right now Monolith and ParaSwap together are the best experience. And I hope it stays like that.
But that's the best we were making in the beginning, and I think right now we have the first proofs that are coming from the end users, because for us speed, because many people in the beginning were telling us, why do we care about speed, because Ethereum blocks anyways take 10 seconds, so why don't you care about getting a response in like 300 milliseconds, 200 milliseconds, whatever. But for us it's the UX that changes a lot, because users they are used to like Web 2.0 techs that have an immediate response. When I go to Google, I type my research, I have immediate response, and even Google, they show the number of milliseconds that they were able to give me the response, and that's UX. That's purely UX, and people can can have a lot of time window to choose in order to make a decision. Like for this Ethereum block time, I can select, I want to sell 10 ETH to DAI, or maybe I want to sell 12, or maybe I want to sell only one, and I can type my price and get responses along the way. And the way we do it, it's a bit tricky. It's not easy. Otherwise, everyone would have been doing it. So we use some cash, but it's not easy to use cash, because you could miss out on prices and get disconnected from the blockchain. So we have some background in backend engineering, and we use those techniques in order to track things from the mempool, and also keep listening on what's happening on the blockchain and pick it as it comes, and not having to redo unnecessary computations. So that's the secret between codes. But for us, also it's an approach, it's a mindset that some other products are missing out on, and by this idea that, but it's not important. But for us, I think it's very, very important.
Yeah. I think the only thing that we were able to like one up, like basically add to the ParaSwap experience, is that I believe we usually you have to authorize an ERC20 before you can actually swap it. I think what our experience is doing, I think we're the first of all wallets, I believe. We authorize and do the swap in one go. So it just makes the UX even easier. I just believe that Ryan on our team was saying that the only issue with that is it messes up the gas calculation, where now it's harder for ParaSwap to figure out exactly how much gas a transaction is going to cost. And so we just give the maximum we think it'll cost. But I just did a swap before this call. I think the gas was just over $5 for a swap total.
Right now, gas is crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's like a 40 way, which is, could be around $5.
Oh my God.
Transaction. That's an average. Some other transactions could cost you 10 to 15. I had some people complaining about costing them more, but that's the issue right now with the current states of the network.
It's an absolute nightmare, especially if you're trying to do something that's not targeted at like the whales who don't care about and today we're paying maybe $5 for a swap, in our case, during really bad, during really high gas prices, we can pay up to like $40 for a user contract deployment. So each user that signs up, they get their own contracts, and we're doing a lot of work. We think we can get that down by like tenfold by using more libraries. But we kind of, us the whole parity thing, we kind of wanted to give everyone their own self-contained contract, which is what we're doing now. But yeah, with gas prices going up, there's kind of this cap to how far Ethereum can actually go into the real world right now, and it's a shame.
But it's kind of back to 2017, right? With the CryptoKitties, that was the case. Normally, naturally, it should go down at some point. Right now, I think there are some Ponzi schemes projects that are taking the gas too high, but not only those, there's DeFi as well. There's farming mania that's happening right now. And also I saw Tether transfers. People are paying a lot to transfer Tether to Ethereum. So naturally, it should go down at some points. It's just that we don't know, and this time it took too long. We had that, I think, in October or November. We had like 2 weeks with very, very high gas, and I expect that it should go down, but can't say when. It's just hard.
Yeah. I mean, it's like someone in the chat, Fox Raymond, he's saying that indeed DeFi lending is pointless the moment you have to pay like a $5 gas fee, right? If you're getting 5% a year, that's great in a traditional markets context. But if you're, for any interaction with that money, you're like spending that on gas, kind of defeats the point. And so, this really is an area where we have to figure out the right solution.
But at least now gas should be accounted in your profits. So when you say I would lend to compound and I get X%, you should take gas into account because you're paying the gas twice. The first time when you, 3 times, when you approve, when you deposit, and when you withdraw the profits. So that's a 3 times gas. And Bryce last time did a very nice work in the DeFi Friends meetup. He created like a table with amounts and the number of gas and how much you're making. So and taking gas into consideration, and it starts making sense, if I'm not mistaken, from $1,000 a year, where you start becoming close to break even, and up to 5,000 it starts to make sense. And just for the story, yesterday I tried to get my synthetics weekly returns, and I forgot to do it Wednesday, and it was still time to do it, still time window, and I had something small like $8, and I paid $6.5 for the transaction fee. So it's like $1.50 out of just like gas took 80% of my profit between quotes. Which yes, I was lucky. Still got $1.50, which is like not pays for other transactions gas. But yeah, it's not the best experience we're having right now. But also, I think it proves that there is demand for Ethereum, right? It's like when you have a new product being launched to the market. It's not perfect. It has some bugs. It has many inefficiencies, and people still use it. So that proves that people want this product no matter what.
Yeah. Have you? I guess one company that's going in an interesting direction is it's like Diversify, formerly ETHFinex. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, definitely yes. I think they did a very good job integrating Sparkware, and that's what's great is that they have access to what you can call infinite liquidity, but the liquidity of Bitfinex. So you have the experience of Bitfinex while being non-custodial. That's, I think, something great. And I talked to the Starkware team. They have very good plans for the future, so that you can be plugged into the network of Starkware and have access to all those DEXs that are plugged into the Starkware. So you will be pulling liquidity from centralized exchanges to decentralized exchanges. which is, I think it's a pragmatic approach into getting more liquidity into DeFi by just taking what's available on centralized exchanges. So I think it's great. I like the work of Loopring as well. We
Okay.
have a different approach, but I think it's a nice work. Now it's starting to see more and more layer two solutions being deployed in production and having a working product. It's still early to judge whether those techs are great. I mean, great, they are great, but I mean, they are solving real problems. People are using them on a daily basis. But it's cool to start seeing things are deployed without waiting for E 2.0 to launch.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I guess what's your perspective on like regulation coming into the space? Like, do you know anything about like AML D5 or?
I don't know. I saw some projects doing AML, but we know, for instance, IDEX, they have a KYC AML, but I think that's something understandable between codes because they already fallen into some specific regulations that are money transmitters because what they're doing, they are matching orders themselves in a centralized fashion, even though they are not really custodial because at the end the custody is on a smart contract and the users still have, I mean, more or less the control over the smart contracts, but they match orders on their server. And that's if you look at the regulations, the laws, the old laws of the SEC. We're based on, I mean, the reasoning is based on the US laws, even though none of us are in the US, but other regulators also get inspired by the US law. So I mean, the reason why we're considering this. And when you match orders of one trader with the other, you are considered as a broker or as a money transmitter. So that's why they started with the KYC AML, I think, as a prevention, and because of what happened to Ether Delta, who are doing exactly the same thing, more or less. I mean, they were running a matching engine in their server. For us, we talked to our lawyers, given what we're doing. For us, the fact that there's no matching at the end, users are matched with smart contracts with software. So it's a relation with the user in a software that is a smart contract at the end, and that's also the case with the compounds, the Aave, and Uniswaps, and so on. Although it's not 100% sheltered because the fact that you are running an API, tomorrow maybe some regulators will come, not necessarily for KYC ML, but they could come, for instance, as we saw in the DeForce hack, they came to other services and asked them for IP addresses and so on and so forth. They didn't come to us, but some others claim that they came to them. So I think there's some kind of liability, but that's why we are planning to decentralize also the API side. So we're going to create some kind of a network. We're working on this project. It's still in early stages, where we will not have to run the API ourselves and figuring out a way to keep the same quality of service and also by not having us necessarily running the network. So if we arrive to this stage, I mean, you can have like a very good quality aggregator running on like normal servers, but without having a central point of failure. That's I mean, the project for us, how we envision this in the future.
Yeah, I guess it's a bit different for us as we're like more in the real world, and so right now we're going through the FTA authorization process. We're doing all the work. Our team is, so deep into getting like preparing for the FTA in the UK. I think 400 caseworkers have been assigned to only 80 crypto companies to like do the authorization for them. And so on average, maybe we'll have 4 people assigned to Monolith to like look at all of our stuff. And so, yeah, I hope we get authorized because it'll be a big win from like a consumer standpoint. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question how the world is going to approach regulation for our space, right? So the logic that you were just talking about, how if the company isn't like directly touching any of the interactions, if it's all going through contracts that are hosted on Ethereum, then yeah, that means we're not facilitating the actual financial service. We're just allowing other people to interact with each other, basically. Yeah, hopefully that holds up.
It's still maybe a gray area, right? Because it can be an interpretation problem that we may have. Like some regulators can maybe adopt a different interpretation, but I think the common sense, in my opinion, says that we are not in intermediaries, and the critical part is that we don't hold custody of the funds. That's like the most basic part. And the second thing is that we don't take one party and the other and try to match them together. That's, I think, at least if based on the current laws and regulations that exist right now. Maybe they would change, but as the last time there was a DeFi summit in 2 months, and there was the Senator Pierce, I forgot his first name, this crypto-friendly SEC commissioner, and she said two things. So if the project is, like Ethereum, sufficiently decentralized, so in this case, in the eyes of the SEC, should not be regulated as a money transmitter or as a broker, like in a financial markets. And also, one other reality is that DeFi, no matter what we can think of ourselves, is still very, very small. So it's not getting the attention of the regulators. They have already troubles like following up with what's happening in crypto. So DeFi, it's even a niche within a niche. So I don't think regulators will be interested in the next 3 to 5 years unless we explode. We do like 1000x. Maybe this time they will come, but I guess within this time, many of the projects that already existing will be sufficiently decentralized and maybe will not fall into the current reasoning they have.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we're trying to be like to preempt things. So as it stands, ParaSwap, for example, being able to access like all the DEX is a feature we put behind KYC, right? So you have to have applied for the card first to be able to get access to this. And this is basically going to be true for all of the services that Monolith is going to offer. And it's just to make sure that when the day comes, we don't, effectively, scramble to meet the new regulations. And I guess it kind of ties into where we're going as a company. So, we're not ultimately our vision is to be able to provide a substitute for Monzo or for Revolut or for whatever banking experience that a person uses today. And if we're going to do that through DeFi, we kind of need to we need to protect these users more than if they were to be, like real experts like yourself, right? And so, I guess this even ties into like the gas price being high. Rather than a very active crypto experience where you're constantly interacting with all these dApps manually, we think for the near term, for the general public, the most interesting solutions are going to be more of the passive experiences where it's like growing your yield. And yeah, we just want to make sure that if we're going to build an experience that's that easy to fit into like a normal person's life, that the regulator is going to look at us and going to be like, well, these guys are doing everything according to how we'd expect a financial service company to do things. But yeah.
Yeah, but I think for you it makes sense because you are interacting with the real world as you mentioned before, so which is already heavily regulated. So in order to get these people, and also to let the regulators allows you to bring in the masses into crypto. I mean, you have to play by the rules. There is no getting around of this. So I think it's a pragmatic. Why not? I mean, getting millions slash billions of users. This is how it works, and yeah, means I don't see any problem with that. Visa cards are heavily regulated. To get the user to have Visa, they should go to KYC AML. So yeah, they should do it, and that's I think people understand. I never saw somebody complaining about this because they understand. And I saw also other project like Realty, for instance, where they are dealing with real estate, which is also heavily regulated. So people getting through KYC AML, that's not a thing that people have a problem with. People maybe they would have a problem if they would use a UI that does only crypto to crypto exchanges and doesn't touch the real world in any shape or form. Maybe in this case, people don't like it. I don't like it. But when you interacting with Visa card, with the banking system, that's something we are already doing when we use our cards with our bank. So why not using a hybrid system that will connect the real world with DeFi? I think that's totally fine.
Yeah, and I guess the ultimate dream is, and this is something someone mentions in the chat, Mr. Gavin Wilkinson, is that hopefully we'll arrive at the point where you only do KYC once, right? That you hopefully join Monolith, do KYC once, and then for the rest of your life, hopefully, you'll never have to do it again, because you have access to like a self-sovereign ID token or something that, you know, let's say you use a DApp, or let's say you use a totally different company, but, you know, let's say you're booking a flight, you know, to go to the other side of the world, and this flight DApp, you know, that manages all the tickets and whatever, they need to access your ID, right? And they just request it from your Monolith wallet, and you can like authorize or something like that, and then you can see inside your app which companies you've authorized, and if you don't like one anymore, you can withdraw the access. You know, like ultimately that is where we should be going. And yeah, so hopefully, you know, this can be like the last time that people ever do KYC.
That
because it makes people uncomfortable. Yeah.
That makes sense, because what's the thing that I don't like about KYC is onboarding users. The onboarding process is too heavy. People have to go through many steps. And if you have a solution like this where you can tap a button, you already did the KYC once, and it's a push of a button, and you authorize the third party to access your data. And even better, you can revoke when you think it's no longer necessary. Yeah, I think that's a killer. That's a killer app. I think that will make a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a
I would use it. How would you do it?
Sure. Yeah, I agree. Here's a totally different topic, and it's a bit of a touchy subject, but like, I feel like the DEX aggregator space went through a little bit of a gang war, for lack of better description, like an online Twitter-based war. I didn't think you're very hands-off, and you're a lot more behind the scenes, which I think it's probably the right place to be. But yeah, like a few months ago, there were definitely like, yeah, people were attacking each other. So you don't want to say anything about this, you shouldn't, because I don't want to cause any trouble. But
no, there's no trouble. I mean, there's one actor, not to name it. I mean, there's only one who have a aggressive strategy to approaching competition, and they had many people on the ecosystem talking to them to calm them down. But they are still aggressive, even behind the scenes, sending letters to other competitors and trying to intimidate. I think they don't need to, because like none of the other projects are doing this and getting away and doing a lot of volumes. So I invite them just to calm down and be friendly, and that's it. The world, the life is better by being friendly than trying to fight. I don't think it matters. I don't think it brings to users I don't think it brings any advantage to anyone again.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how our little industry kind of descends into wars so easily.
It's pointless, I think, because it's a very niche, and we are just like fighting with each other, and that's not visible at all to the outside world. So I think it's pointless. Maybe it can matter if it's like an Apple with a Google doing lawsuits and billions of dollars are at stake. But I mean, two companies, none of them making revenue, just playing on traction. I think it's just pointless. It's just it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're avoiding any drama, I guess. So I think a lot of people want to hear you speak a little bit about Balancer, because of course it's the new hot topic. Balancer, I guess I'm much further away from like the intricate details of this type of stuff than you are. But my summary of Balancer is that, it's like a next step from like away from Curve and from Uniswap, where and Bancor, where now basically all tokens are put together in one big basket, and they all have ratios between each other, and this is incrementally more efficient than just having dual pairs. Yeah. And now, of course, there's because they just launched, there was an oversight somewhere, and I think through like a fee, like an inbuilt fee mechanism, which some tokens have, which always causes problems. Like we've had a lot of issues with some tokens in our contract wallet because they have a fee built in. There was an exploit, an RV, someone used a flash loan to, Yeah,
that happened yesterday. So basically, Balancer is like a mix between Curve and Uniswap, if you would, or say another MM. So you can have, I think, infinites, if I'm not mistaken. They started with like 8 maximum, but can go up to 8 tokens in one pool. And the percent, like the ratios, can be arbitrary, so that people can innovate, can create pools, unique pools. They can attract people, can market their pools. So it's very, very cool concept. And the issue that happened yesterday is independent of how good the Balancer is. It's dependent on, as you mentioned, on the structure of the token. So this token in question, has, I think, a 1% fee each time you make a transfer. And this 1% fee will be burned, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's so the supply of the token gets down. So what did the hacker? When he went to this pool, it had this TCRA or STRA, whatever, plus other tokens. And what they did, they borrowed 23 million from UIDX dollars, and in ETH, and they went and they started buying. They started buying STRA, I think. They started buying until the price became too cheap. The price of the other tokens became too cheap. So it's a balancer. So when there is too much of one token, the price goes down. When there's too little of this token, the price goes up, so that it keeps a ratio, the ratios. So the price of since he bought a lot of this token, its price went up too high, and the price of the others went down too high. So it went up too high because it's enough to buy some, and there is a destruction of its supply, so there is a lot less of this token. And then he ended up having to buy the rest of the tokens with a very, very low price, almost for free, and ended up draining something like $500,000 from the pool with a $300,000 profits. He ended up spending, or she or they ended up spending something like $50 in gas fees. So you can imagine the price. And that's transaction took a few seconds, like 3 blocks, and it was done, 300K. And this time, compared to other hackers of like BZX, or not BZX, but D-Force, for instance, they use Tornado Cash. So you can just track these guys. They started, you see the address. It's the first transaction was a Tornado Cash transaction. So you can even keep track of them. So yeah, it seems quite sophisticated as an attack. But that's not the fault of Balancer. Somebody said that they already have submitted a vulnerability on these pools, but that could have happened in Uniswap as well. This book, because now it's happened that there are much more assets. I think it didn't happen in Uniswap because Uniswap, this token doesn't work in Uniswap. That's I think the reason it didn't happen on Uniswap before.
Yeah. What this is leading to is kind of a standardization of ERC, a forced standardization of ERC20s, because back in the day, people were making all kinds of small mutations of an ERC20 token, which made them all a little bit different, in terms of how wallets would interact with them and dApps would interact with them. And I think this is like the final blow to non-standard ERC20s. It's so much more beneficial to make sure that your token as a project works very well with all of this type of liquidity pool or DEX stuff, so that you don't, miss out effectively.
You know what's scary is that there are some tokens who have this property. It's just not activated, and one of them is USDT.
Yeah.
And there are some projects, and I guess maybe Balancer would evolve into this as well, like Compound, who have already double checked this property, this fee property, and even if tomorrow USDT will, that's what they claim at least, and I double checked in the documentation. Even if it happens, Compound will not be drained, but maybe other pools will be. So should be careful about this.
Yeah. It's still a very pioneering space.
Yeah, indeed. It's still very early. And I think it's better that these things happen right now than in 2-3 years. Well, we will be dealing with hundreds of billions or maybe trillions of dollars, where a fall in DeFi or like in crypto could cause some kind of crisis somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. This is ultimately the power of our little Ethereum economy, that almost every aspect of it is going to be so battle tested. I think there's a word for it, anti-fragile, which is like from I forget the right name, Taleb, Nicholas Taleb or something. The one who talks about the black swan, who coined that term. And the Ethereum economy is like ticks all the boxes for being an anti-fragile economy, right? In contrast with the old world economy, where everything needs to be protected with like regulations to make sure that there's no exploits, right? With us, with our space, all of that is going to be hard coded. It's going to be built in, and anything that doesn't, follow the most brutal, like most rigorous, like rules in a way, is going to be punished, right? And you can just get a flash loan and someone can destroy something. And so it's good because it means that we'll have a more robust economy that we can all, it's not gonna, it's a bit hard to predict how everything is gonna all work together in 5-10 years, right? But I guess the hopeful assumption is that it'll be a much more robust and transparent economy where if things go wrong, we can see them going wrong, and that compared to like the world today. And so, yeah, at least it's the right direction.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree with that.
I think there's a few more things that I think a lot of people in our like Monolith channels are keen to hear about, like what we're doing next on a more practical level. So I think I'll just quickly talk about that. So, yeah, I think we're getting rid of like the gas tank because it's just too complex. Literally 50% of our users, that's such a huge issue to understand that they have to have ETH, and instead we'll allow you to pay with any token. Then I think the next thing is we want to add money in. We want to be the easiest way to go from money in your bank account to money in Monolith. And we're not even gonna, have like fiat in the middle. So you'll be able to use a debit card or a credit card to add money to the Monolith wallet. But this is going to be immediately in like a DAI, right? It'll start off as DAI for a little bit, because that's what we're testing now. But then it'll become a DAI, and this will just mean that in one transaction, you'll have, interest-bearing tokens on Monolith. And I think another thing that kind of ties into ParaSwap. So because we do AML, anti-money laundering, on all of our wallets, even though we can't seize your money, we do still check. But for us to do our checks right, we have to have a price feed for the tokens. And we don't have, well, our AML service, CoinFirm, doesn't have a price feed for all of the new DeFi tokens. And of CoinFirm's clients, we're the one that's most into DeFi, right? The others only care about like Bitcoin and Ether, whatever. We're most into DeFi for them, and so we're working on making sure that all the DeFi tokens, and this includes Avi's tokens, right? That they're all going to work in ParaSwap, because we've had to restrict some of the tokens now because there's no price feed. That'll all be solved hopefully very soon. Like I get messages from Stanny in the middle of the night. I get this happened once about like when is a token, a DAI or a USDC going to be added to Monolith, and I know their whole team uses our wallet. So that's all coming very soon, and I think at that point in time, we're kind of at this point where I could viably go to my own parents, right, and be like, give this a try, right? This is going to be a little bit better in some ways, in some basic ways, and a lot better potentially, carefully, in some other ways than whatever bank they currently use, right? And I think that's just going to be such an exciting moment, right, for us, that we finally, that's what we want to be for the DeFi space. We just want to be the wallet, the consumer finance experience that you're probably gonna use yourself, right? Because you just don't want to do all the thinking all the time, right? You kind of want a passive, relaxed DeFi experience, but also the wallet that you're going to advise to your friends, right? Hey, you want to get the benefits of this DeFi space? Just get Monolith. So I think that's what we're working towards, and I think we're getting really close. We need some UI, UX updates, and we want to blow people's mind a little bit, and then we'll have a nice time.
Would you have a business and personal, alternative on the card? Like within the app, I can have one card for my company and one card for a personal card, and I can use both, one for the business expenses, one for the personal expenses, or will you just stay focused only on the B2C side?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think I do see why this is very interesting as well from a business perspective. I think right now we're just trying to make sure that we see some sort of positive affirmation from the market, from the consumer market, that whatever we're building, they like it, And so up until the point where we see like proper traction with our products right now the target market is the like regular consumers. Until that point, I think we're just going to be laser focused on that, right? And it kind of sucks that as an answer, because it's like a similar question to when are we going to launch in America, or like in like Australia or wherever. This is something that people ask so much, but the reality is that that's like a sideways business step, right? It broadens the market, but it doesn't necessarily push the product itself forward. We kind of want to push the product forward enough, be novel enough, as a DeFi money experience, that we know for sure this is going to work, right? That we know for sure if we launch this in America, it'll be an instant hit. And right now, it's just too early for that.
Got it, yeah.
Yeah.
And you also want to stay focused on only DeFi primitives, or also bring in maybe other assets outside of DeFi or outside of crypto?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very interesting discussion. So if you zoom out today and look at the Ethereum space and what's happening, on Ethereum, we have this thing called DeFi, which are effectively financial services, right? Just these, like lending and borrowing and trading and, swapping and whatever. All of these are like verbs, things you can do with money. But the only money that can interact with this is either, like crypto money, like new tokens, right? Or money that's being brought in from the old world, right? So like what we're about to launch with a debit card that someone can add their pounds or their euros and then use it with DeFi, right? Make it available to this DeFi, all these financial services. If you look at, all the value in the world, if you look at a regular person, maybe only a small percentage of their worth is in the form of fiat money, right? Is in the form of something that can very easily be added to the Ethereum ecosystem through like a debit card or a SEPA bank transaction or something like that. But we miss all of this other potential wealth, like their car, like their house, like their own time potentially, like their identity, like assets they hold, their PlayStation, right? And ultimately, if we can, one of the next frontiers will be to bring all of that value as well to Ethereum, to DeFi, right? That if you want to take out a loan, it's done in minutes, where you just put your car token in there, right? And your KYC token or whatever, and you instantly get issued a loan or something, right? You can't do that very easily today. And this is an area of money that fintechs such as Monzo and Revolut have never really, the most innovative fintechs of the old world, have never really been able to do something with that, right? Like they for the most part limit themselves to that fiat money, the simple, easy to transfer, easy to import money. If DeFi can if Ethereum can ultimately import all the value of everything else, all other assets, I think that is ultimately the killer to traditional finance, right? Something that they never, were able to do in a way that we could do it on Ethereum. I just hope that one day you'll be able to talk to your Monolith wallet, tell it like, oh, I want to go to Japan, in a week, right, for DevCon 17, and it immediately looks at all the flights, the flight smart contracts, right? Each aircraft has its own contracts with 30 tokens, seat tokens attached to it. And it's like, oh, these three, pick one, right? You pick one within the experience, and then it's it automatically gives this DApp your KYC token, right? And it does pays for it, and now you have in your wallet your flight ticket token. You can get an insurance on it instantly, or you can sell it back if you decide a day later you don't actually want to go or whatever. This is the level of bringing assets, even something like a flight ticket, into the digital realm that isn't possible today with traditional banking or with Web 2 technologies. And I think we're pioneering right now with Ethereum. We're pioneering on kind of similar things to what traditional fintech has done, because it's the most easy. It's the lowest barrier to entry to start to use fiat money, very liquid money, and to use financial services with that, DeFi financial services with that. But ultimately, that's just the start. And once we start to dive into, so Realty is a perfect early example of this, right? think it's going to be so much more amazing in our little Ethereum economy in a few years' time than the traditional economy. And I think that's why, if we can just wrap that all up into a very simple, compelling experience that, a normal user one day who owns a house or who owns a car through their Monolith wallet can add that asset, can make a new car token which represents ownership, like legal ownership of that car, and whatever, and get the benefit from that. That's something that would kill traditional fintech, right? And so, anyway, yeah, it's.
That's very impressive. Yeah, impressive, and also leveraging of the real capabilities of the Ethereum blockchain and blockchains in general. That's great. That's cool. I'm looking forward. I will be one of your first users when you deploy this this amazing features. I will be definitely using it. So.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this is hopefully it's all the hard work we can just outsource to you, where it's like, oh, this user wants insurance, this will come to your ParaSwap service with like, oh, this user has a Tesla car token, and your service will be like, oh, here's an insurance token for it, or like, here are these 20 insurances, and I found the best one for you. That's what we want, Mounir.
Yeah, just swap it. Push a button and swap your car token with the insurance token, and that's definitely a use case that we're addressing. Anything that has a value attached to the token can be used in the future. That's definitely the goal, is to be able to swap value and not just swap ERC20 tokens. That ERC, that's what exists. That's the current market. In the future will be much broader than this. And what you mentioned, yes, it makes me more encouraged to follow, but to continue on this.
Well, we all expect great things from you, Mounir, and we're very happy to be working with ParaSwap. Our team has been very excited, and I also want to thank them for all the hard work, and of course everyone for listening. Speak soon, Mounir.
Great talking to you, Mel. Speak soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
You too. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Bye.